Hello and welcome to Liberty and Gun Rights Podcasting. Today is July 1st, 2023. Today I'm joined by Kandy Harrell of Gray Lady Defense in South Carolina. Hello, Kandy Harrell. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience in women's shooter training.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me today. I'm happy to be here. I'm Kandy Harrell of Gray Lady Self-Defense. My mission is to educate and empower women with the confidence and skills to safely and accurately shoot a handgun and be their own first responder. I've been teaching women for 7 years now. I'm an NRA certified pistol instructor and range safety officer. I'm also a certified image-based decisional drills instructor. An alumni about 4 years now for the Complete Combatant. They're a training organization out of Dahlonega, Georgia. Been attending their classes for about 4 years, and alumni of the Mingle, which is a national event for women in the firearms community. They have instructors, leaders of women's shooting organizations, and Second Amendment advocates, that type of thing. And we get training for a full weekend, and it's just awesome. My current regular class offerings are basic firearms training for women, Beyond the Basics, which is an intermediate pistol skills for women class, private instruction. I also offer custom group classes by appointment. And I've recently added a family firearm safety and awareness class, also by appointment. I receive inquiries all the time that ask about if I teach the South Carolina CWP qualification course. I don't teach the CWP because I just felt there was plenty of qualified instructors in our community that provide it. And I wanted to focus on mainly just teaching women the basics and preparing them for the real world. The skills you need before you get your CWP. There's also an equal number of inquiries stating they just want to learn to shoot and be safe and they don't want a CWP. So I just find that many believe that they need the CWP just to even purchase a firearm. I guess that's a little bit of the transfer, from the northern states that kind of require that, and but they don't here. And I just feel like that's a basic skill that everybody should have. I think helping women achieve good marksmanship and decision-making skills for self-defense, both inside and outside the home, is probably an important first step in their firearms journey. Even before you buy a firearm, I think you should be getting the basics. The best path to responsible firearms ownership is just to get out there and take a class. If you're scared, just do it scared. You get past it. The firearm and the CWP is not a magic talisman that will protect you. Only training and regular practice will give you the tools you need to protect yourself. So I say just get out there and get you some classes. I think I'm finding, too, that women are usually the health and safety director in our homes for our families, and I think providing them with the essential firearm safety and awareness training ensures that this knowledge is passed down to the next generations. Many women consider taking firearms training for the first time or consider purchasing a firearm for the first time will often feel that taking a class from a male instructor is a bit intimidating. I think there are plenty of excellent male instructors out there, and the only way you get past the intimidation is to just get out there and start taking some training. Taking it from a female makes you feel a little less intimidated, and then you don't feel like you're going to sound dumb by asking questions. There really are no dumb questions. It's just you don't know what you don't know. I think the only way you can improve your knowledge is to just go ahead and get out there, take your classes, ask the questions, and then just get out there and take more training even after the basics. The CWP is not the end of your training. You have to just keep continuing that training and keep practicing it all the time. It's a very perishable skill. I think the only way you're going to get confidence in your shooting abilities and have that intimidation factor dissipate is to just go out there and take that training. And it shouldn't matter the gender of the instructor. I think there's plenty of great instructors out there. So just get out there and get started. That's the only way you can do it, is just get going, get started.
Hey, that's great. So coming from the female or women shooters perspective, what are what are some of the hurdles that women shooters have to uh, get over? I know you spoke about um, men instructors and how they might intimidate some of the ladies. What are some of the other hurdles that they have to cross, or what are some of the reasons that women shooters get involved with personal self defense and getting their CWP or just getting training uh, on learning how to shoot? Talk about, I don't know, accessories. What kind of accessories do they look to get or need? I mean, there's whole personal defense industry out there and firearms industry where uh, men and women uh, can choose what kind of training they get and accessories and things like that.
Well, I think that's excellent set of questions. So let me address the first one. I think one of the factors that women run into is just the intimidation of walking into a gun store, first of all. Depending on where you go, you may have, hey, little lady, here's this little pink pistol for you. I've seen that, and I've actually heard that. So it's kind of intimidating to go in and say, I don't think that's what I need, or they don't know enough. And so they end up stuck with something that's really not appropriate for them. The appropriate first step is to first identify, what firearm do they want and the reasons why. So each person should be able to come upon kind of their mission, their own personal mission. Why do I want to do this? What am I going to use it for? Just for home defense? Am I going to actually get a CWP because I want to carry it on my person? So we start with that mission first. I've started a series of all the newbie questions, a Q&A series that's kind of addresses how you have to go through kind of fit, function, and answering those questions, kind of a checklist of sorts to decide, what's going to be the appropriate gun for me. And the only way to do that is to actually try them out. Just looking at it in the counter, picking it up and holding it is probably not going to be enough. You have to go through the process of actually shooting the pistol to see if it's an appropriate gun for you. Then you go into now, if I'm going to get a CWP, how am I going to carry this thing? So there's so much selection out there, not in just firearms, but in all the gear, that you have to decide, how am I going to carry this? Purse carry may not be appropriate for everybody. Really that takes some training and practice as well. And you have to have the right kind. It's not just throw it in your purse and carry it around. Holsters, there's a great variety of them out there, but some of them are just horrible choices, that you kind of want to steer away from. So I think getting with somebody that already has some experience with that, asking those questions, demonstrating some of those things. I have a class, that's what my intermediate kind of focuses on. Beyond the basics is kind of getting you understanding what holsters are, what purses are, the difference between, like just belly bands and soft holsters, all that kind of thing. And trying to identify, what's going to be appropriate for you, not to mention how you carry it. Not everybody wears, jeans and tactical pants and, a belt and, we don't always have all that gear. Ladies kind of have a lot of variety in clothing. And so it's kind of a journey to go out there and try and identify the right gear for you and how you're going to carry that. And then being responsible about it is part of the deal too. So you can have all this great gear, but if you don't practice with it, again, we go back to the magic talisman, right? It's not going to protect you. If you don't know how to use it and you don't practice with it regularly, then it's not going to be there for you when you need it. And I think you had another question in there.
Yeah, I'm sorry for the multifaceted question. So here in the Summerville or the Tri-County area, Charleston, Dorchester, Summerville, or actually Berkeley, Dorchester, and Charleston area, I know that in the past, ATP has always been a great place to take new shooters, and you can rent a gun for $5 per weapon, and as long as you use their ammo, and you can go to their gun counter and you can look and see what type of firearms that they have. They have revolvers, they have semi-automatics, they got Glock, Sig, Walther, all the name brands, and so that's an excellent place to take a new shooter and let them try out different firearms to see what they're comfortable with. There's also Palmetto State
State
Armory.
Armory.
I don't know if they have. I guess you
That's where I
can
take
rent.
them.
You can rent weapons
You
from.
absolutely can. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a
So
member there and I take a lot of students there. They have a gun rental counter. It's pretty decent selection there. And the guns for purchase are also, out there in a pretty good selection. Range is nice. I usually get, I find that they treat the women, pretty good out there. There's also a women's organization that meets there, Armed Women of America. They have a shooting chapter there, and they meet, I think, once a month there, and once a month out at a range over in St. George. So, it's getting better, with the women's groups. There's a little bit more to offer for women. My focus has been, mainly on trying to get people started, and I offer a shopping service too, so people don't feel so scared going to the store going shopping for guns and ammo and stuff by themselves. I don't know enough, and I don't know what questions to ask. So, $25, I'll go with you. I don't care if it takes us 2 hours. That's just, it is what it is, right? You don't know how long that's going to take. And, so I think getting rid of the intimidation, then they're confident enough to just go in there by themselves. I think if you just get out there and do it, that's half the battle, right? Is just getting that first foot forward, and trying to just get started. I think that's really what most people find is intimidating the most. A lot of them, they're starting on this journey because they're kind of not liking what they see around them. And I think the news, of course, is a big, factor in that. I think it's a concern, when you start seeing things in your community, break-ins, carjackings, things like that, and it makes them really scared. And the only way you're going to get past the fear is to get some confidence in your ability to defend yourself and make good decisions. So I think that, getting some training and understanding and then continuing your education is probably the only way you're going to get any kind of level of confidence, in your ability.
I think you're providing a wonderful service to the women shooters out there, the moms, the daughters, the sisters that are in families, and some of them may be in a family that is familiar with firearms, or their dads or brothers might be avid hunters, or they may be in a family that nobody knows anything about firearms, and they might be a little bit leery of they may be scared of the thought of using deadly force, or having to be faced with a personal self-defense situation where they're coming home from the grocery store and somebody's hiding in the bushes, or they're in the Walmart parking lot late at night, and there are people around them that may or may not have ill intent. There's a lot of scenarios to think about and discuss with people, and especially in the training realm. And how do you address questions that have to do with, well, I've never shot a firearm, and so I'm going to learn how to handle this firearm and be proficient with it. But how do you address the psychological issue of actually using the firearm on another human and possibly taking a life? How do you address that, or has anybody even asked you that question?
I actually have. I mean, that was also a struggle I had to work through when I first took up, using firearms. I said, I'm not sure, if I can do this. And if you're not sure, then you definitely shouldn't be carrying it around if you're not sure, right? Where I came in was, I said I do to my husband. And that meant that I'm going to do everything in my power to come home or to protect myself, so that till death do us parts, as far away as possible, correct? And I think my family would, prefer that I do everything in my power to not allow someone else to take my life or cause me a serious injury. If you're going to, beat me until I'm brain dead, then you're just leaving a big struggle for my family. And everything I can do to avoid that, my life is worth something. And I feel like those people have, zero value on human life, when they come to attack you. So I think that's kind of how I address it. It's certainly a great moral dilemma, right? That their life is important. While their life they took into their own hands when they went out and decided to attack another person. So they obviously have very little, value for human life, and probably not much for their own as well. I think that's kind of where I addressed it at, and each person has to kind of, go through that decision process themselves. But when I bring it up that way, they go, I just didn't think of it that way. And I said, I would argue that your family thinks you're very important and that your life is worth defending. So I think that helps. Does that kind of go where you wanted?
Yeah, absolutely. We're all different. We all come from different walks of life, and we all have issues or things that we're just not sure about, things that we have to think about. I remember a long time ago when I went through, when I went to a police academy and back in 1982, and of course we had, firearms training and all kinds of other training that CWP holders don't get, but they definitely talked about the psychological part of having to take a human life, and you had to mentally prepare yourself and be sure that when the time came that you would be able to do it if you had to. And obviously, when we're under the threat of serious bodily injury and or death, that would be the only time that we are legally allowed to use deadly force. And of course, the firearm is called a force multiplier. And so a female that's 140 pounds soaking wet, faced with a predator that might be 6 foot tall and 240 pounds and wielding a knife or a gun or whatever, the firearm allows that person to even the playing field. And none of us ever want to have to take a human life. And so I think it's a good discussion topic and thing to bring to bear. If during your training sessions, I would imagine that at some point that discussion comes up, and I'm glad you're there for them. When it comes to personal self-defense, I always tell people that your brain is your most powerful weapon in your arsenal. The firearm is merely a tool that is there to be used in extreme circumstances. If you get backed into a corner and you don't have any way out, then so be it. Then you have to do that. And none of us ever hope or pray that when we get up in the morning and go about our daily lives that we'll have to do that. But we know that we live in an increasingly violent society. We have to have church security, safety teams to protect the flock and the pastor, because you never know when some crazy person is going to come into the sanctuary or try to shoot people, hurt people.
Yeah.
And so I like to educate people and let them know that there are other tools, like keeping your head on a swivel, self-awareness, situational awareness, pay attention to what's going on around you. If you're out in the parking lot at Piggly Wiggly or Harris Teeter or Walmart or wherever it is, if you're at a shopping mall, don't be walking by yourself. Take somebody with you if you can, whether it's one of your children or your husband or a brother or whatever. Try to not put yourself in situations where you're going to be at a disadvantage, and put your iPads and your cell phones in your purse or in your pocket and pay attention to what's going on around you. And what about do you ever talk to women shooters about non-lethal weapons like pepper spray or batons or other things other than a firearm?
Yes, I absolutely do. That's kind of part of the basic, you know, starting point for anybody that's thinking about getting a firearm is I let them know, that's one tool. Being proficient with it, great. Another great tool is something that is going to carry a little less than lethal. I don't really talk about carrying batons. They're just really inconvenient. I mean, how would you really carry that on you? But I do talk about palm pepper spray or Saber Red, something, a really good quality pepper spray, and learning to use it. People think that they can just, pick it up and spray it, and they don't realize that there's a particular way to apply it so that it's, effective. And then you talk about your mental awareness as well. If you are super distracted, you got, three little kids running around, you're trying to keep them on a leash, so to speak, and that's going to really ruin your awareness of what's going on around you. So let them know that that's a factor in their plan when they're out in public. Staying off the phone when you're out in transitional areas, going out into the parking lot. Every time you see somebody in the store and you feel like they're following you around, that doesn't always mean it's a bad guy following you around looking to get you. Okay. But being aware of some of those signs and keeping people at that you don't know at kind of a specific distance. I had one lady pop up on me at a convenience store. Came right up to me, and I told her, I said, you need to back up about 5 feet, 6 feet here, and you can ask me what you're going to ask me, but I think you need to stay out of my space. She kind of looked a little bit surprised, and I said, you have to remember that not everybody, is nice. And so you just approach somebody you don't know, and you don't know what my reaction is going to be. And it kind of perked her up a little bit. She realized that she, was at a disadvantage, because she didn't know what I had. And I said, you could have gotten a face full of pepper spray. And she's kind of backed off. I don't know. She's just kind of a transient looking person, And, but the same thing when you're out, you get these people that'll walk up to you in the parking lot, and say, hey, would you like to donate to whatever? And I just put up your hand. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to curse people out. You can just say, I'm sorry, I'm not interested, or I'm sorry, I can't help you today. And then just keep walking. If that means you walk, 10 spaces away from where your car is located, you do that. Just get distance between you and that other person. And we talk about that in class, and I ask them questions like, what would you do if, and let them kind of come up with their own thinking pattern, and it just helps you kind of figure out, what's a good plan when you're out. Even at home, we've had break-ins in neighborhood nearby. So it's always something to think about when you're out in your yard. I've seen videos before of people out mowing their yard, and they had some crazy neighbor that, came up and attacked them. You just never know, so keeping your awareness up, even at home, when I pull up the parking lot in my driveway, I'll look kind of around before I even unlock and open my doors sometimes, just to make sure somebody isn't coming up, and surprising me out of nowhere. So it's things like that you have to just really think about and keeping kind of condition yellow, we call it, right? So that you're aware of everything that's going on around you and not being surprised, by things that are lurking around the corners. You just never know. That includes dogs. I had a neighborhood dog that, popped up in our carport one day and did not see him at all until he just showed up in the carport, and it scared us. And I realized my awareness was down because I was at home.
Yeah, I think when we're at home, our homes are our castles, and we just automatically feel safe, right? We don't necessarily expect a bad person to creep up on us, or we just think that we're safe automatically. I think that's natural and normal for us to feel safe at home. We have an expectation of safety, just like when we're in our cars driving from point A to point B. That's our castle when we're in our car, and we have an expectation of privacy. Well, maybe not maybe not so much privacy, but we have an expectation of freedom of movement, liberty, going where we need to go, just living our daily lives. We have an expectation of safety. We don't expect somebody to try to walk up to our car and carjack us while we're at the stoplight or at the stop sign. And I had a friend of mine that lives out in Ravenel told me a story. Him and his wife, they go to our church, and I'm not going to name names, but the wife was inside the home, and the husband was out in his driveway washing his car. And because he was at home, he didn't have his weapon on him. He didn't have his everyday carry on him, and it was in his glove box. And so he's washing his car, and he looks up, and there's this guy walking down his driveway with a knife in his hand, and he was bloody. He had just gotten into, I don't know, I think he had just gotten into a fight or attacked somebody like two or three houses down. And the guy's walking at a pretty fast clip, and my friend was like, oh shit, my gun's in my glove box in my car that I'm washing. And so he managed to luckily get to his glove box, get the weapon out, and pointed the weapon at the intruder and said, "Stop," and if you don't stop, then I'm going to shoot you. And of course, the wife hears that, and she comes out and she gets on her cell phone, calls 911. The sheriff's department comes out there, and the guy ran off. I think my friends got his attention with the firearm, and so he ran off, went down the street, and they located him, arrested him, and he had just attacked one of his neighbors. I don't know if he was drunk or high on meth or whatever, but that's just a glaring example of, hey, I'm out in my driveway washing my car. I'm not expecting something crazy to happen, and that's where your situational awareness, needs to be, like you said, in condition yellow. Unfortunately, in this day and age, we need to be on. We walk outside our door, you need to be in condition yellow, and I tell my wife, I'm like, when she's letting the dogs out to go do their business, I'm like, you look around, you look through the storm door, and look outside and make sure you don't see anything before you open that door and let the dogs out. And my wife is the most loving person in the world, and she just is not keenly aware of danger. And so over the years, I've had to help her with her situational awareness and why it's important and all of that.
And I think that's a real tough balance, isn't it? To be an affectionate, loving, caring, compassionate person, but having to kind of withhold just a little bit and to kind of put up a little bit of a barrier, in your mind to say, I don't know this person or I don't know these people. So I need to be a little bit cautious until I have an understanding that, they're not, not wanting to try and harm me, and people, I don't know what they expect a bad guy to look like or a bad girl, right? I mean, what are you going to do if the crazy meth head is actually, somebody that looks like your teenage daughter? Are you going to be able to defend yourself from them, if they come at you with a knife? I'm just saying, people have this perception of, wow, he looked like a really nice guy. I've heard this. And I said, what did you expect the bad guy to look like? I mean, I would argue, all those girls that, Ted Bundy, killed, probably thought the same thing. He was a good looking guy. I just don't understand. So, people need to change their perceptions a little bit of the world around them, and just understand that bad guys, they don't think like us, so you have to understand that, that everybody is not you, and you just have to be careful out there and teach your kids to be careful.
Yeah, that's why we talk about the 21 foot rule. You always want to keep people at least 21 feet away from you, if not more, right? Because it takes, depending on their physical, their physique and their level of conditioning, physical conditioning. I mean, they can cross that 21-foot barrier in 3 to 6 seconds, and you have to be able to respond. And to they talk about the OODA loop, I think it's called, where they you're the first thing that goes through your mind is you're in denial. You're like, oh wait, this can't be happening. I'm at home. Why do they have a gun or a knife in their hand, or why are they being aggressive? Why are they yelling at me? And there's different stages of that loop that we could talk about, which I won't get into, but yeah, it's very difficult when especially when you're at home or you're in a place where you have an expectation of safety, and then all of a sudden everything goes south, and you're like, you have to be able to go from, you know, condition green to condition yellow or even red very quickly because your life might depend on it. So, anyway, I am really thankful and appreciative of you taking your time today to tell us about Gray Lady Self Defense and the training you offer. And I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to speak to our audience at Liberty and Gun Rights Podcast. Our podcast is hosted on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. If you're listening to it and you like what you hear, be sure to share our podcast with your Second Amendment friends, family, and coworkers. You can contact us at Liberty Gun Rights Podcast at proton.me. That's Liberty Gun Rights Podcast at proton.me. Thank you for listening to today's episode, and thank you for the privilege of your time, and we'll talk to you later. Goodbye for now.
Thank you, James.
Yes, thank you.